Hello there, welcome. The talk I'm going to give today is about astrology, individuation, and consciousness. I would have liked to, this is the chart for today for London. I'm using a whole sign house here. As there are very few people here, originally, I want to basically find out about an audience and find out what is a particular interest for this talk. But as it is, if I can just explain why I picked this topic. I actually noticed on the list that some people are interested in individuation, which I found interesting because, like, obviously there are different levels of it. And what I have found is majority of the people are not particularly interested in the topic because it's actually very demanding and it's very difficult. And I imagine there will only be about 5% of the population will be interested in anything remotely like this. On the other hand, because I've done so much work on myself over the past 20 years, really, and I just, I would like to share my process because it's been a long, very long process. And I just feel without talking about consciousness, it's very difficult to talk about individuation because the two are effectively very much connected. And I'll come back to that later. Now, I imagine the people who want to hear this talk, probably there are different purposes. I would imagine majority of you will be interested in personal development, or you may be an astrologer who want to find new ways of working with your clients. Maybe somebody will be interested in some new perspectives, curiosity, or whatever other reasons. For people who go into personal development, the question I always ask them is that, are they committed to any necessary change? Because a lot of people come into therapy, but they don't really want to change. They are not aware that they need to change. They just think that, they come to a therapist and offload their issues without having to do anything about it. But on the other hand, that in order for anybody to become more fully integrated and whole, there's a lot of work need to be done. And quite often that also means that we have to change. And not everybody is ready or able. For an example, for some people in a relationship, they don't want to upset the apple cart, because if they were to go home and start wanting to change, there can be a very strong reactions. So in a sense that, like, something that, like, people can get around it, but in a way it takes time because they have to find their own way of negotiating the relationship. Not necessarily change the partner, but work out in a way, negotiate a way, or make compromises in a way that will be acceptable for both of them. Because, like, when I went into therapy myself in the beginning, my partner had a very strong reaction against it. Well, he still does, 20 years on. And of course, the relationship is inevitably broken down because of that. Because when I started, basically, it is almost like going down a slope. You cannot stop it. So it's something that, like, I think people may want to be more mindful of. As to astrologers who want to work with clients and want to help them implement change, again, basically, not only the client need to know, I think basically they've got the right to know what is required of them. But for the therapist as well, invariably, as you work with people, you yourself will also have to make adjustment. So like the difference between astrologers and therapists, quite often now, astrologers don't really have to account to anybody, but as therapists, that we actually have to account to our supervisors. So in a sense that we also have to be quite committed to ethical conduct. So before we actually work with the client, or we have to know exactly what are involved. And I know a lot of people, like basically, as therapists, as we, in the beginning, we have placement, we get into training. Quite often that, we have to think on our feet. And the client often knows that because obviously, they go to placement agencies, they get the treatment for a very small amount of money, if at all. But on the other hand, that basically with astrologers, quite often I know that a lot of people, they just do a very basic course and they started to consult clients. And when they trigger clients and they wouldn't know what to do with it. And if you basically, as I like, we just have to be very mindful as to how we work with clients, really. So I would have liked people to take a minute to think what they want out of the session. And also have a think, who are you? What is your identity? How would you describe yourself? Where are you now compared with where you want to go? And what is your objectives in terms of individuation and consciousness? If you were to work with other people, or if you just want to do it as a personal development, do you have an idea as to who you are? If not, it's something that, it's worth journaling, write things down, reflect, work out exactly what you want out of this. So what is individuation and consciousness about? Assuming most of you are astrologers and believe in synchronicity, I want to demonstrate some of the key themes with Sabian symbols, because surprisingly, it's very relevant for what the symbol showing today. This hour is actually extremely relevant to the topic I want to cover, or the way I want, my objective, really. So the rising degree in London at 9 o'clock was 26 degree Libra. And the Sabian symbol is an eagle and a dove turning constantly into each other. From Linda Hill's website, sabiansymbols.com, I have extracted this key phrase. Is the ability or the necessity of us being able to integrate the principle of the will with the principle of emotions. Now, one of the reasons why I've chosen this topic is for the fact that in Western society, we are very used to living in our head. And quite often that we have got very strong ego and with very strong will. But on the other hand, that is almost becoming a very common thing or habit or way of being, that we ignore our body, we ignore our feelings. I don't know if you will agree, many of us, since we were, since at school or even at home, quite often that we've been told what not to do, not to feel, what not to think. Because of that, unconsciously, there are things that we've forbidden ourselves to do, i.e. think in a certain way, or feel in a certain way, or act in a certain way. So in a sense that for people going to therapy or want to becoming more individualistic or individuated as in Jung terms, or become more conscious of things, that we have to be able to combine our thought process, our will, with our emotions. The ruler of the ascendant is Venus at 29 degrees Aries. The symbol is the music of the spheres, which many people identify that with astrology anyway. But in this context, I think it is a matter of us learning to be in tune with our inner beings, our inner voice, who we are. Quite often by submitting to convention or submitting to the social taboo, that we don't talk about things, we don't think about things, we don't feel about things, quite often that we betray ourselves. So it's also a good time for us to try to become at one with ourselves and attune to our own path. The moon is at 18 degree Virgo. It's very interesting. It's about two girls playing with a Ouija board. I don't know how many of you have actually done a Ouija board before. This can be very scary for some people. Some people don't take it seriously, but the only time I did it, actually, it was very accurate. Like all way of like fortune telling or divination or tarot card or whatever, quite often we just feel that we want a little bit of extra, something external that give us guidance, help us to focus on what we need to do. But on the other hand, quite often, like doing our own work, quite often that we might start off with particular ideas as to where I want to go. But on the other hand, that once you get into it, you realize that, oh, actually something else turned up, that you have to go to a different path. By insisting on where we only want to go, we may be basically we are not going with the flow and create difficulties for ourselves. Now, recently, actually, I've been looking at shamanism. It's quite interesting because this is like, for people who go into shamanism, is much more strong in a sense that you have to accept the guidance of the spirit. Or people will get ill, or they get into accident, that they got diverted back to the supposed path. But on the other hand, that if we are not, the spirit hasn't chosen us to go down that route, that path, we have got much more choice in a sense that we are almost, you can say, we are free to make our own mistakes. So quite often that when we start off something, in a sense that even though we want a destination, particular destination, but we also need to become flexible. You know, if you're wanting to consult an external source of wisdom, then you have to be prepared to be changed again, really. Moon ruler Mercury is at 15 Aries, going retrograde. And it really described the fact that basically, you know, I had this talk a few weeks ago, but then there's something wrong with the PowerPoint, and I wasn't able to continue. But on the other hand, that this is relevant because the symbol says it's an Indian weaving a blanket in the light of the setting sun. The interesting thing about individuation is that quite often people don't even think about it until after they are middle age, not only 35 or 42, or maybe, you know, when they reach their current return 50, when their career probably have come into a stop, you know, they can't go further, and they look around, and quite often that like the past also, our past also catch up with us as well. I think a lot of people after 42, they started to think about the past rather than the future. At that time, we basically, you know, in terms of like doing our own work, a lot of people reject it totally. They think, oh, we want to live in the here and now. We don't want to look at the past. We don't want to know. They don't want to work out how they felt, what happened. But on the other hand, that if we committed to this path, if we committed to become more conscious, if we committed to become individuated, we would have to take time to do the things that are not particularly exciting. You know, how many people would like to just, you know, sit around and basically, or, you know, even go for a walk and think about things. Some people prefer to go for social events or go walk for a dog. Basically, people like doing. I think, you know, again, it's a culture. A lot of people feel they need always to do something rather than keep time for themselves, do what they feel like to do, because quite often it evokes guilt, sense of guilt within us, that we're supposed to be doing this, that, or the other, but we are taking time out. But on the other hand, I think we ultimately will be rewarded because we are able to become who we are through the process of challenging ourselves in terms of what we were taught. You know, we receive wisdom from other people that we never really think about. But when we think about it, when we decide, oh, actually, they are not my value, you know, I would prefer to do X rather than Y. But because, like, you know, half of our life trying to, you know, basically, you know, we internalize what's been taught to us. We don't actually have time to think or challenge that. So by weaving the blanket, we are creating something very useful, but also weave into the images of our life and our history. And by doing that, my feeling is actually we will allow ourselves, we actually will open up more inner space for us to accommodate more of the things we want to do, or having more space for us to take care of ourselves, because as we get older, self-care is actually very important. Quite often I hear, you know, majority of people I know, or my clients or whatever, well, my clients actually are a bit different, but a lot of people I know, when they get to their 50s or 60s, they always say, oh, I'm getting old and I'm getting slow, I'm getting tired, they won't do this and they won't do that. But on the other hand, that like, quite a lot of my clients are actually in their late 60s. And usually they come with particular issues, but majority of them, basically, they just want to look at ourselves, look at their life, and, have a summation of it. Basically, they want to know what else they can do, or want to make peace with the past. So in a sense, I think, this is very relevant. By doing the work, the inner work, we are able to produce something that we would not be expecting. So to summarize, the key themes about the benefit, if you like, of becoming much more conscious and becoming more individuated, we can actually integrate our will with our emotions. And we can become at one with ourselves, and then access our deeper inner wisdom. That because we work through basically this, whatever we value is no longer somebody else baggage, but it's actually something that we internalize, we work through, that it is right for us, that we can feel confident about like guiding other peoples with it. And then we can become at one with our whole life and our history. Now, usually I run workshops for people, and there are particular goals that I want to achieve. First one is the key of what I do, is to raise somatic awareness. In terms of somatic, meaning of the body. About the body, it's not only about our feelings, our sensations, our intuitions, our instinct, but the sum of it. Before I've done the work, I was basically totally not in touch with myself, and basically self-care does not exist. But on the other hand, that once you're becoming more aware of what you do, who you are, you will no longer reject your body, because you recognize the body is part of us, is that really, really important part of us. By getting in touch with our body, we can make everything functions better. We can actually become more intuitive. We know who we are. We even have a sense of inner knowing. Even though we may not have all the facts we need to make a particular decision, but on the other hand, that we know ourselves enough to understand, oh, this is what I prefer, or this is not what I prefer. I know a lot of people, like Sun and Neo people, particularly, they know exactly what they want. But majority of other people, they don't have that ability. By working through, doing the inner work and becoming more in touch with the whole of us, we are able to basically be more, again, at one with ourselves, really. Another thing about communication I notice is that, at least where I live anyway, in the town, in the country, in the city where I live, people don't communicate. I discovered that when I first do my placement, 15 years ago. Clients will come to me, they can talk about normal things, whatever, events in their lives. But when you ask them to talk about anything that is about themselves or about their feelings, they cannot work it out. It's quite often that not only they can't express it, they don't even know what is it that they feel. But on the other hand, that by doing the work, you know, be more in touch with ourselves, with our body, it's much easier for us to access our feeling, or to even to work out exactly, you know, when you feel angry, why are you feeling angry? Or you realize, oh, actually, you know, this is my habitual response. I become angry rather than becoming sad. That's usually for men. For women, usually the other way. You know, they're always feeling. We know we always feel we're grieving. We feel sad when we should become angry. Obviously, there are ways. Basically, we need to be very careful about when we are in touch with our feelings, how we deal with our feelings, how we express our feelings. But on the other hand, like knowing how we feel, how we sense things, is the key to become conscious, because a lot of unconscious is actually because we don't know. So by being able to not only feeling it, you know, quite often feeling is not enough, but being able to articulate what we feel, what we think clearly, and communicate it and share with another person is actually what will help us to become whole, and will become more authentic, more congruent, and more able to look after ourselves and understand that why is it important that we have to look after ourselves. And that is not egotistical thing, it's not a narcissistic thing. It is something that is essential, because for us to have the energy, the ability, the drive to continue to go forward, to continue to live a good life, we need to look after ourselves. Another thing, benefit, is that, you know, once we become more conscious, we become more empathic, be more able to allow people to be who they are rather than trying to control people. By stop judging ourselves, quite often we also realize that we can stop judging other people. In a sense that, like I always think, basically, you know, of course we need to learn to judge, we need to know how to judge, but not because we are angry. You know, for me, quite often people judge other people is because they are really angry. Often that we need to learn to judge so that we can make decisions. But on the other hand, that, like, you know, by being angry or being judgmental, basically we destroy relationships. And we are more able, you know, by doing the inner work, by being more in touch, we can be, and we will acquire a sense of, like, you know, if I know who I am, I don't no longer need to rush around to try to achieve this or do that, because I have much more confidence in me. Another very key thing is the soul. I think majority of people do believe that we have got a soul. But one thing that a lot of people are not aware is that trauma actually damage our soul. In shamanic terms, that quite often we'll say basically our soul pieces has gone missing or gone into hiding, or some people may have sold their soul because of material benefit or whatever, or they may not even know that they have lost their soul or lost their soul pieces. But on the other hand, that once we becoming much more conscious as who we are, be more certain of ourselves, we can actually call our soul pieces back, because we know we want to be integral. We need to be integral. It's something which is very natural. It's very natural process. It's automatic. Anyway, so there are two parts to it. In common parlance, we know what individuality is, except that quite often, you know, when we think of ourselves as individual, we don't not automatically thinks that actually the other side of the being individual is there's actually a collective out there. You know, there are other people as a whole or society. So there's always two sides of the same coin, really. So like by being more conscious about this, we will no longer ignore other people, because the other people is actually part of us, part of society, part of our connection, part of everything we are, really. In terms of consciousness, again, basically, there's the you know, quite a lot of people say, oh, you know, everybody's conscious, because we are basically, you know, we wake up, you know, every morning we wake up, we are aware of ourselves, and we can respond to our environment and our surrounding. Or basically, we'll say it's something that, you know, basically I'm in my head, you know. But surprisingly, you know, well, not surprisingly, in recent years, we have this joke thing, you know, the film, the saying the zombie apocalypse. But on the other hand, in the philosophical terms, they are genuine people who are acting like zombies. They are not really with it. They're not really in their body. There are many reasons for that. But what we're talking about here in terms of individuation is Jung. You know, I think majority of you here probably is aware that in terms of, like, in psychoanalytic term, Jungian psychoanalytic terms, is a process of us developing our personality and character, and separate out what is us and what is the influence of this collective, especially collective unconscious. There's a lot of material that I can't actually cover, because there are really so much to this. But one of the things that you know, I'm thinking about it still shock me, is the how easy, when we are not aware, how easy it is for other people to project things into us and interject things into us, that we becoming what they think we are. You know, it is interesting, it's quite magical, really. But on the other hand, the more you're aware of who you are, the more you're able to protect yourself to the projection of other people's energy. In terms of consciousness, again, basically, I said there's most real things. You wake up in the morning, you're conscious. But on the other hand, I think a lot of us also realize that if you look around, the people we meet day to day, or even on Facebook, there are different levels of consciousness. And here, what I'm trying to include here, basically, the consciousness is about us being genuinely consciously aware and register in our mind all our senses, what we see, if you like, you can actually include the third eye, what we smell, what we touch, what we hear, etc. But on the other hand, that, like, you know, we talk about the five senses as if it's natural or normal, but talk to people, I think especially when you get older, a lot of people seem to be losing the faculty, especially if they are taking medications for pain, say for example, for pain. By trying to reduce the physical sense of pain, they actually also lessen the possibility of them sensing pleasure or other thing, basically the body become numb. Another criteria for being conscious is that we're able to reason. Again, you may look around and understand that a lot of people, you know, they think that they can reason, they will argue, but on the other hand, that where they come from is actually from where emotional, the emotional place. They will get very angry, they'll get upset, you know, they may try to think that they're very reasonable, but they really can't see. Also about imagination. A lot of people have fantasies. Can we actually distinguish as to what is the fantasy we have in our head and what we can imagine things to be? Again, there's a huge difference there, but I won't, because of time issue, I won't go further into it. Emotion is a huge thing, as that a lot of people, they are not in touch with their emotions. So whatever decisions they make, whatever things that they say, they are really not aware, because in the sense that another thing really always staggered me is that a lot of people, they talk to you, they tell you something, and then you reflect it back to them immediately. They deny what they said. They don't even remember what they said. It's because the emotion is so unconscious for them that there's a lot of repression of denial. So in a sense that, like, it's important for us, in the sense that it can take a lot of work. Not ever, it's something not easy, automatic, especially if we are so used to denying or repressing how we feel. Memories is another quite interesting issue, but on the other hand, there is also to do with consciousness. If you look at the people with dementia, in the sense that, like, you know, there are different kind of, again, basically, there is the body memory as well. Again, I won't go into it because I can just go on forever on it, really. So anyway, so individuation and consciousness, which comes first? But I would say both of them are important, both of them actually interrelated with each other, really. As I said here, basically, you know, consciousness, just like individuation, is actually, we have to include our mind and our body. There are different aspects, different levels to both things. But on the other hand, that, like, you know, it will be a lie to say that I can become, you know, individuated without consciousness. And I mentioned this before. There are people, basically, they have particular emotional need to be connected to somebody else, or basically, you know, the codependence especially. It takes a long time, but quite often that, like, in the beginning, they become very fearful about change. You know, they know that it's quite interesting. As I do know enough people who does things like that they never want to change, because, like, changing for them means they might destroy the relationship. A relationship keep them secure, and in order to keep that security, they just need not to change. But on the other hand, I think for people who have done the work, who is planning on doing the work, you will find it is extremely demanding. But on the other hand, ultimately, it's very fulfilling, and it really is good for us. This is a quote from this guru. I can't even pronounce his name really. Read this, and you can probably think of a few people that you know who are like this. They are just basically like zombie. They are so empty inside. They are effectively dead. You know, they're not alive. You know, they don't have the drive. They don't, you know, they don't have hope, wish, or plans. You know, there's nothing more they would do. They just basically live the day-to-day existence. Go to work, come home, cook, go to bed, and repeat the same thing. It's sad to say, you know, quite often, especially when people become really, really tired, I can really appreciate the fact that at times that people like going through the process and they get so tired, they can't do anymore, and they just do the most basic for them. But on the other hand, that is not living. So that is one type, you know, basically, as I said, there are, you know, circumstances. But on the other hand, there are genuine people. If you look at the chart, I think for some of you, you will recognize the chart as to who I'm talking about. You know, it's so obvious for me. Anyway, here I've got some examples of people who are quite unconscious. In terms of astrology, there are different ways of working with it and looking at it or explaining it. So this is a chart of somebody who is extremely important. You may or may not know, or you know, I think majority of you probably know this chart really, really well. But on the other hand, that there may be people who is seeing it for the first time. This is actually Donald Trump, the American president. And this is his progress chart. Now, if we can just take a minute to look at this. So there's an element missing. Yes, it is Earth. If we look at this, so by progression, again, his progress sun has gone into Virgo just before, around the time that he became president. But usually, you know, when by progression a planet go into a new sign, usually it would take a bit of time for them to get used to it. But on the other hand, that like in terms of Earth, it's actually quite important for us to draw in our body. So for the fact that he hasn't got that, so basically, you know, again, basically it can take an hour to analyze this chart. So I just quickly put down, you know, key points that I want to talk about. That lately he has got no Earth. By progression, his sun has gone into Virgo, but only just about a year ago. Otherwise, no Earth. Now, he is not somebody who has done a lot of individuation work, and he is certainly very unconscious. How do we see that? I think fundamentally he's much more emotional, and people suggest. As I don't know how many people agree with me, because nobody seems to want to talk about emotions. You know, even the words seem to be taboo these days. But on the other hand, I think fundamentally he's a very emotional person. I don't want to criticize him for about a lot of people say, oh, he is a narcissist. I don't like to use that as a therapist, because obviously we all gone through, as children, we all gone through a stage of narcissistic stage. But on the other hand, that people like himself may have got trauma or something happened during the time that caused him to got stuck there. But on the other hand, that you can see by progression, literally he has got 2 planets in the 12, but on the other hand that they are not necessarily the planets we were think about in terms of like a collective unconscious, even though there is. But if you look at by progression, he actually got 5 planets in the 12. And I think basically, and also basically the ruler of the 12 is actually also in 12 as well. And I do believe that he carries a lot, basically, as a, like, because of the fact that he's unconscious. It's very easy for the collective to put into him or project onto him, basically, whatever they need him to act out. This is a second chart. This is an unknown person. And she's actually passed away over 10 years ago. Now, this is a lady who is very spiritual. I don't think she was religious. She was brought up in a convent school, but she wasn't in terms of like religious. She's got an ethnic background as well. So culturally, she is very much like inclined to be dominated. But on the other hand, as a like, I know that she had done a lot of work trying to get over whatever conditioning she had been put under. But on the other hand, that one of the interesting thing is she has got a singleton moon in Taurus above the horizon. Everything else is under the horizon. And this is her progress chart when she passed on. Now, she's not with the water in her chart. She's got Neptune in her chart. Some people will say, oh, that is actually quite a strong Neptune. But on the other hand, that like basically depends on the person. It can mean that basically they don't really know who they are, not clearly, unless they have got a lot of strong air energy, which in a way that she has. I think one of the issues she had was that, like, she has got progressed Venus sextile Mars when she was like 20 years old. But since then, as you can see from the chart anyway, basically Venus and Mars never make any more aspect. In terms of how she lived it out is that she felt that she couldn't find somebody who is right for her until she met somebody who she really liked. But on the other hand, that basically things did not work out for her because she has got a blind spot. She does not realize that cultural dominance means that she has made a lot of assumptions that the other person doesn't like. And she also, in a sense, she thinks that she is very spiritual. But on the other hand, that she has got particular way of being that evoke hostility against her. Anyway, they broke up and she was heartbroken. At the time, actually, I did look at her chart. Basically, it was a Pluto thing. Even a few years before I look at her chart, I thought, oh, that is quite a tough thing coming up. And then basically, the next thing I knew was that she has a massive heart attack. But on the other hand, that knowing her, I just felt that she just did not want to live beyond 50 because she wants to, being a Libran, she wants to go or pass on before she becoming old and unwanted. So it's very sad. As that basically she tried very hard to become conscious. And she definitely was individuated. But on the other hand, that they are blind spot. The fact that she worked very hard on herself, but she never went to therapy. She never actually worked with anybody in that sense, or she didn't do astrology. And as that, like, basically she never took any advice. And I always wondered if only she had, whether the outcome would have been different. I see time is running up, so basically, as I'll be very quick. I was going to show you another chart, another few chart actually. Okay, so the last chart let's look at is somebody. You can say is that, no, again, basically, as somebody who is very conscious. No, she has worked hard on herself. She went to therapy, and she's very successful person and very well respected for the fact that she's very conscious. She's very much individuated in the mind, not in the body. This is the chart of Brené Brown. I think maybe at least half of you would know her. Wonderful lady, and you know, I just love her. You know, she's just like, you know, if you watch her video on YouTube, you know, she teach people so much. But on the other hand, that, like, one of the things, actually I was going to put her pictures here, but basically she has got quite a big body. It's something that I have noticed of a lot of my colleagues, therapists or counselors. When you are in a profession, quite often that basically there's a lot of emotions, a lot of, you know, undercurrents, you know, whirling around the room, and you need to be quite strong and quite sturdy in order to hold those energies. And I noticed a lot of my colleagues are actually quite big. Now, I used to be quite big as well, but on the other hand, that, like, in a sense that, like, we have to be conscious about our body, because they actually, we don't need to make ourselves a mountain in order to be able to be stable. We just need to know how to process things. Sorry, I think time must be up, so I'm going to finish here. But the fact that basically is that, like, you know, she has done a lot of work. But on the other hand, that this is why I think the body consciousness is very important. Working on the body is, you know, also very important. I'm going to have to stop here because I see basically time is running out. I was going to talk about Jung's chart actually.
And we still have 7 minutes.
7 minutes, have we?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're welcome to go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but basically, their consciousness at different level. A lot of people, it's a cultural thing. It happened from 2,000 years ago that we worship the mind, and more and more we tend to ignore our body. As a consequence, we also ignore our emotions because it's not something that people are comfortable talking about. There's something else as well. Basically, we also be quite mindful of our spirit and our psyche. You know, these are the 5 levels of consciousness, which I think we can become conscious of and work with. Now, again, basically, you know, in the most ideal situations, we have got good parents, good family upbringing, and they have, in turn, they have got their own. And those are the people who are the most functional and most in touch with themselves. But for a lot of us, and there are more and more of us, we are wounded in some ways, even if we have good upbringing, by the time we go to school, by the time we become a social being, quite often we are wounded in different ways. So unless such time that we becoming very conscious with our psychosoma, basically our psyche as well as the body, in addition to other mental therapeutic methods, we are never going to be complete. I'm not saying that basically that is not acceptable. Basically, we can only do as much as we can do. Because it does take a lot of work. But on the other hand, for every advance that we can make, we help ourselves to be a fuller being. We help ourselves to be naturally more able to deal with things, be more happy or peaceful. Again, basically, not only in terms of psychoanalytic method, we know all these defense mechanisms we can use. But I can also assure you, when you're working with your body, working with your emotions, there are something about unconscious. They will also use as the same defense mechanism. So in a sense that it's always good to work with somebody or work with some modules, like work with art, for an example, work with dance, work with singing. All those things will release us, help us to release whatever that we are trying to hold on to that we would not let go. So how we might do it? Individuation. What we have to understand is that it is not something that you've done and then you finish. It is a process. And it's a constant work in progress. And it encompasses different dimensions: psychological, archetypal, affective, transpersonal, and spiritual. Another thing really important for us to do is that to try to find out ways of incorporating the unconscious and make the unconscious conscious. And we also have to remember, it's not only us. We connect to other people. There's always the connective elements. We also need to be integrated. Because quite often the collective, if we are not conscious, the collective unconscious or anything other people don't own, we may end up somehow grabbing it for ourselves and get ourselves into trouble. There are different ways of working with the, like trying to make the unconscious conscious. We can do creative visualization. We can work with dreams. But as I said, basically we can also work with art. Art is actually quite a key thing. Or even automatic writing or just journaling. There are ways of we can actually find out exactly what it might be the content of our unconscious. I won't look anymore at the chart because this is Brené Brown, so I won't look into it. Now, yeah, basically, again, basically it's a Brené Brown. But what I want to talk about in the end is basically what will help us, what will strengthen us, our resolve, our ability to become more conscious and individuated. Quite often people only do one thing, or they do yoga and say, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine. But on the other hand, basically for me, it is, basically it's not only one prong, it's like a fork, there are 4 elements there. And it's very much like this as well. So we have to do many things, Mindfulness is one of the best, but on the other hand, that basically you have to excuse me for laughing. I know a lot of people teaching mindfulness, they are not that mindful themselves because they are unconscious. So in a sense that, like, I think my ideas of mindfulness is quite different from everybody else's. So in a sense that maybe we'll come to that later. another time. But these techniques, mindfulness or meditations, will actually help us, or any other mindfulness techniques or elaborate slow exercise help us. Because as you know, as you probably hear anyway, that with Tai Chi or Qi Kung, the most accomplished practitioner is actually move the snowers as if like you don't even notice the movement. That is about control. It's about conscious control of all the muscles in your body. If you can actually achieve that stage, you can actually achieve a lot of things. But on the other hand, as I appreciate it is time. And quite often when we become so busy that we don't even like leave time for ourselves to do things like that. And I admit I'm one. Anyway, there are other somatic therapies that will help us as well, as a dance, music, art, body work. A lot of this we can do for ourselves, but on the other hand, it's always good to do with other people. And also like body work or body psychotherapy, you can't actually do it for yourself, in the sense that you do need to go to a properly qualified practitioner. Now, peak experience, people ask me, what is peak experience? But basically anything that will elevate your spirit to a level that you can actually go beyond yourself. In terms of language, I have explained before, but basically, the more in touch we are with our language, if we can articulate everything that we think or feel clearly and communicate to somebody else, or basically mentalization and journaling, also important, the act of writing will help us. Basically, we need to obviously find ways of expressing ourselves in such a way that is understandable. Now, the last thing is probably very easy for people, and I think maybe people should do more, is communion with nature. The more wilderness you can go to, actually, the better, because you'll be breathing fresh air. There is something about nature that just naturally nourish us, that will make us like get out of our head. We can feel more, we can actually sense more, we become more complete. Now, what weakens, what will stop us, or what reduce our ability to become conscious and mindful? Many of this you probably know about anyway. Like if we have, we're defensive. Quite often we find that quite often that like when you see, somebody is going to say something that you don't like, already you sort of erect a barrier. You don't want to know, you don't want to hear. So it's a matter of like being able to be open yourself up, to be non-defensive. I know it's not easy for a lot of people, but it's a process of trying. Maybe trying with somebody who will be careful, will be sympathetic, will be sensitive to your needs or your feelings. And gradually you're becoming more open.
And we have 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you. Another thing is somatic defenses. As that William Wake have written about it, is the body defenses, is the character analysis in our body. We actually, muscularly or skeletally, there are ways that we erect a somatic defenses. Or if we take medications, either legal or illegal, or we will, the body-mind split, if we're always dwelling in our head and not looking after our body, or addictions to anything, even internet or relationships, will reduce our ability to become conscious. Trauma, obviously, even car accident, or talk about long-term trauma, so we have to work on that. and soul loss I have mentioned before. I can't take any questions, but thank you for listening to this talk.
And thank you very much. Oh,
Thank
lovely.
you.
Got your profile there. Great.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you so much from all of us. That was really helpful. And everybody, would you please thank Anne Cam?
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. That was a really lovely message. I loved it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Anne. Catch you next time. Bye.
Thank you.